Legal and Ethical Responsibilities. Chapter 5. Healthcare professionals are required to know and follow the state laws that regulate their respective license or registrations, or set standards for their respective professions. Failure to meet legal regulations can result in legal action. Legal responsibilities are those that are authorized or based on law. A law is a rule that must be followed and are enforced by federal, state, or local government. There are two main types of laws that affect healthcare workers: criminal law and civil law. Criminal law involves crime. It deals with the wrongs against a person, property, or society. Examples are practicing without a license, illegal possession of drugs, and theft. Civil law deals with relationships between people. Examples are torts and contracts. Torts are wrongful acts that do not involve a contract. Examples are malpractice, negligence, assault and battery, invasion of privacy, false imprisonment, abuse, and defamation. Malpractice is the failure of a professional to use the degree of skill and learning commonly expected in that individual's profession, resulting in injury, loss, or damage to the person receiving care. Examples might include a physician not administering a tetanus injection when a patient has a puncture wound, or a nurse performing minor surgery without having any training. Negligence is the failure to give care that is normally expected of a person in a particular position, resulting in injury to another person. Examples are falls that occurred when side rails were left down, not reporting defective equipment, and etc. Assault includes a threat or attempt to injure. Battery is the unlawful touching of another person without consent. Examples are performing a procedure after a patient has refused to give permission, threatening a patient, or rough treatment. Invasion of privacy can be physical or informational. Physical includes unnecessarily exposing an individual, and informational involves revealing personal information about an individual without that person's consent. Informed consent is permission granted voluntarily by a person who is of sound mind after the procedure and all risks involved have been explained in plain terms. False imprisonment is restraining an individual or restricting an individual's freedom without authorization. Examples are keeping a patient hospitalized against their will, applying physical restraints without proper authorization or no justification. Abuse is any care that results in physical harm, pain, or mental anguish. Physical abuse is hitting or forcing people against their will, restraining movement, depriving people of food or water, and or not providing physical care. Verbal abuse is speaking harshly, swearing, or shouting, using inappropriate words to describe a person's race or nationality, and or writing threats or abusive statements. Psychological abuse is threatening harm, denying rights, belittling, intimidating, or ridiculing the persons and or threatening to reveal information about the person. Sexual abuse is any sexual touching or act, using sexual gestures, and or suggesting sexual behavior even if the patient is willing or tries to initiate it. Domestic abuse occurs when an intimate partner uses threatening or manipulative, aggressive, or violent behavior to maintain power and control over another person. If abuse is directed towards a child, it is called child abuse. If it is directed towards an older person, it's elder abuse. Healthcare workers are required to report any signs and symptoms of abuse to immediate supervisors or an individual in the healthcare facility responsible for reporting suspicions to proper authorities. Healthcare workers must be alert for symptoms and signs of abuse, including unexplained bruises, fractures or burns, poor personal hygiene, irrational fears or a change in personality, aggressive or withdrawn behavior, patient statements that indicate abuse or neglect. Defamation occurs when false statements either cause a person to be ridiculed or damage the person's reputation. Slander is if the information is spoken. Libel is if it's written. Contracts are agreements between two or more parties. Components are offer, acceptance, and consideration. The offer is when a healthcare facility had a treatment or service they can offer to a patient. A competent individual offers to be a patient. Acceptance is when a patient makes an appointment and accepts the treatment or service offered. The healthcare facility accepts the individual as a patient. Consideration is when the patient receives the treatment or service and the healthcare facility receives payment. Implied contracts are understood without verbally expressed terms. Express contracts are stated in distinct and clear language, either orally or in writing. Legal disabilities. A person who has a legal disability does not have the legal capacity to form a contract. Examples of people with legal disabilities are minors, mentally incompetent persons, individuals under the influence of drugs that alter the mental state, and semi-conscious or unconscious people. A breach of contract occurs if the contract is not performed according to the agreement. If the patient does not speak English, a translator or interpreter must be used. The principal is the employer and the agent is the employee. The principal is responsible for actions of the agent and can be required to pay or compensate people who have been injured by the agent. Privileged communications comprise of all information given to healthcare personnel by patients. These must be kept confidential and shared only with other members of the patient's healthcare team and cannot be released without written consent. Exempt information include births and deaths, injuries caused by violence, drug abuse, communicable diseases, and STDs. Healthcare records are privileged. They belong to the facility, however, patients have the right to request a copy. All information charted must be accurate. Errors should be crossed out with a single line and corrected information should be inserted, initialed, and dated. When records are disposed of, they should be burned or shredded to maintain confidentiality. Due to an increase in use of computerized records, healthcare individuals should use safeguards. Examples are limiting personnel who have access to records, using codes, requiring passwords, and monitoring and evaluating computer use. The federal government is concerned about protecting privileged communications and maintaining confidentiality of healthcare records. In the Healthcare Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA, Congress required the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to establish standards to protect health information. This department also published the standards for privacy of individually identifiable health information, which is commonly called the Privacy Rule, which went into effect in 2003. These standards provide federal protection for privacy of healthcare information in all states. Regulations in Privacy Rule require every healthcare provider to inform patients about how their information is used. Patients must sign a consent form for release, written authorization for release of information before a healthcare provider can release any medical records to anyone. This includes another healthcare provider an insurance company, attorney, or even family members. In the privacy rule, the patient should be able to see and obtain copies of their medical records, given information by healthcare provider about how that information is used, allowed to set limits on how personal health info is used, permitted to request healthcare providers take reasonable care to keep communications confidential, given right to state who has access to information, and provided with information on how to file a complaint against a healthcare provider. Ethics are a set of principles dealing with what is morally right or wrong. They provide a standard of conduct or code of behavior. They help healthcare workers analyze information and make appropriate decisions. Basic principles of the Code of Ethics are save lives and promote health, patient comfort, respect a patient's right to die peacefully and with dignity, treat all patients equally, provide the best care possible for every patient, and maintain competent skills and knowledge. Stay up to date and pursue continuing education. Respect rules of confidentiality. Refrain from immoral, unethical, and illegal practices. Show loyalty to patients, coworkers, and employers. Be sincere, honest, and caring. Learn to abide by the Code of Ethics for your chosen career. Patients' rights. Agencies must have written policies for patients' rights, which are factors of care that patients can expect to receive. All personnel must honor and respect these rights. American Hospital Association has affirmed a patient's Bill of Rights. Residents of long-term care facilities have rights guaranteed under the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1987. Long-term care facilities must post a resident's Bill of Rights. Examples are free choice of physician and treatments, and able to share a room with a spouse, if also a resident. Advance directives, also known as legal directives, allow individuals to state desired and undesired medical treatment in the event of incapacitation. It is a legal document. There are two main directives: living will and designation of healthcare surrogate or durable power of attorney. Living wills are documents that allow individuals to state what measures should or should not be taken to prolong life when their conditions are terminal. These must be signed when the individual is competent and witnessed by two adults who cannot benefit from the death. Frequently results in do not resuscitate order, which is when CPR is not performed when the patient stops breathing. Durable power of attorney are documents that permit an individual, which is the principal, to appoint another person, the agent, to make decisions regarding healthcare if the principal should become unable to make these decisions. Patient Self-Determination Act. Any healthcare facility receiving federal funds must provide patients with info regarding and is assisting in preparing advance or legal directives. Healthcare workers must be aware and honor advance and legal directives. Professional standards. Perform only those procedures for which you have been trained and are legally permitted to do. Use approved and correct methods while performing any procedure. Obtain proper authorization before performing any procedure. Identify the patient. Obtain the patient's consent. Observe safety precautions. Keep all information confidential. Think before speaking. Consider what you say. Treat all patients equally. Do not accept tips or bribes for the care you provide. If an error or mistake occurs, report it immediately to your supervisor. Behave professionally in dress, language, manner, and action. Liability insurance provides additional protection in case of legal action. It is your responsibility to understand legal and ethical requirements of your career. Obtain pertinent information from your state board of health or education.